This is a very exciting episode of the Conscious Creator podcast. On this episode, I have a really good family friend on the episode, one that is near and dear to my heart as he has helped guide my journey along the way from a spiritual perspective. And Eric Sheremeta is an individual that has really just, taken himself on a beautiful journey through life. Had a turning point where he got anxious in his life and was experiencing anxiety and was told by doctors that he should be on medication and wasn't willing to accept that for his life. And he knew that wasn't the answer. He knew there had to be a root to the problem. And he was willing to search to figure out what that was. So on this episode, that's where the journey begins in our conversation. And then he takes us through all of the tools that he leveraged to help his journey. One of which, the most powerful, is the medicine that this earth offers us. So, everything from DMT to ayahuasca, peyote, and other medicines that he's leveraged to really get in touch with himself and guide him on his spiritual journey in this world. And so Eric is such a humble individual that openly shares his experience and how he leads such a beautiful, heart-centered life. And I'm excited to share this one with everyone. As I mentioned, he has been a guide for me in my spiritual journey, and he is just full of so much love and light. And I know that everybody who listens in to this one will surely feel that. So excited for you on this one. Listen in and enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Conscious Creator podcast. Today is a special episode as we rock into a bit of a family edition. Few episodes we have here coming that are all based on family members and some close relationships I have. So before we dive in and I introduce our guest today, as always, what we're going to do, because we all have busy lives and we may be listening to this at work, in fact, or while we drive, is we want to center ourselves and just give ourselves a moment of grace before we dive into some learnings and some great conversations. So if you're listening to this, please join us in 3 conscious breaths. So we're just going to breathe in through our nose, out through our mouth with no pause at the bottom, no pause at the top, and just become centered. If you're not driving, please feel free to close your eyes. So powerful in 3, 2, 1, in through our mouth or nose, and release. Again, in through your nose. Rise. One more. Release it all and wiggle it around if you need to. So today on the podcast, we have a really good family friend of mine. For those that aren't watching us with visuals, I have Eric Sheremeta sitting with me, someone that I have known, I would say, since I've been 2 years old. And Eric, I would say in the last few years has become more significant in my life, in my spiritual journey, and a path that I've chosen to go down and what a lot of our chats are about. So before we dive in and I ask Eric some questions, we dive into some great conversation, I do want to acknowledge you for something I haven't even told you, and that is a big part of my journey that you have been in supporting it. And through my challenges with Lyme, you became someone that I could reach out to and have those deeper conversations with when I was first getting into this space, and I didn't have other men to speak with about this that had the knowledge that you did. So I appreciate you and want to acknowledge you for that, because it was a big help for me on my journey, and to allow me to continue down it and also guide me. So thank you.
Of course. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. And that's a big reason of why I wanted to have you on today was because of your knowledge in Eric's going to be very humble and say that, he's not a special human, but he is. He absolutely is. And, he, just the knowledge that he has in the spiritual space, in the psychedelic space, all of the above, in interweaving these practices together as well and using them as tools. So just to launch us off here, I just kind of wanted to jump in with you and ask, where the journey began for you in terms of, was it meditation? Was it even before that? Where did you feel a calling in your life to say, I need to dive a little deeper in one area or another?
I think really it was when you knew my girlfriend Megan, my old ex-girlfriend Megan.
Yeah.
We dated until I was about 25. And I had invested most of my heart into that relationship, so I thought. And I based a lot of my own worth off of the relationship. And I really felt like I was getting love from her. And when that was kind of stopped, it dramatically affected me. She actually dealt with anxiety towards probably for 4 years out of our 6-year relationship, and I never really understood it.
Yeah.
And as soon as she and I broke up, I started experiencing really bad anxiety, and like to the point I was manifesting all sorts of diseases in my mind. I was going to the doctor constantly, and the doctor's telling me there's nothing wrong with me. It's like, it's all in my head. And I'm like, no, it's not in my head. It's not in my head. They want to put me on drugs, to deal with anxiety.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, that's not that. It's not that. I am fucked. I am sick. There's something really wrong with me.
It's scary.
Yeah. And, I had, my mom, she's been on a spiritual journey, since I was probably about 10 or so. And she's had a yogi, and she would bring me there since I was 17. And so 17 to 25, I had gone maybe 10 to 20 times to sit with him, do meditations and stuff. Nothing intellectually ever stuck.
Yeah.
But I did have this feeling of going there, that this peace every time I walked in to sit with Ivan.
Yeah.
And so when I was being told I'm fucked up, it's all in my head, they want to drug me to numb it, I have a real aversion to Western medicine, to pharmaceutical drugs. I have always stayed away from painkillers, and pretty much anything the doctor wants to give me, I'm pretty damn skeptical about. So
I knew that, even when you were 17, around that age.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So when I'm 25 and they're telling me they want to zonk me, they want to put me on benzos, it's I have friends that do all these drugs for fun. It's I don't want to be on those drugs for my life.
To depend on them.
And I don't want to numb myself. I want to deal with whatever's going on.
Yeah.
If I have a problem, at that point, I thought I had a disease. I wanted to cure whatever disease I had.
Find the root of it, not, yeah.
Yeah, which it turns out it was anxiety. But I started going to sit with Ivan because Ivan's my yogi, and he's the one my mom would bring me to. I would go and sit with him, and I started to really, really digest what was going on when we would sit together, and when we would speak. And he started talking about the witness, and I don't know if you know what the witness is within ourselves.
Shadow?
Witness is, I wouldn't really call it the shadow. It's some people kind of associate it with your soul, but it's when you quiet down and you sit there and you watch your thoughts go by. And it's you'll have conversations in your head, you watch those thoughts go by, and it's not the thoughts, it's not what's watching the thoughts kind of computing them, it's what's behind it all. It literally is just witnessing, no attachment to any of it.
Yeah.
And so he started talking about that, and because a lot of anxiety is literally, it's a learned behavior, it's a trauma response, it's in your head, and it's literally just thoughts going around and around. You start getting more, you start circling even harder and even harder and even harder. So my brain was just fucked. I would be lying on the ground. I wouldn't want to leave my house.
Yeah, so it got that bad.
Yeah. And he started talking about the witness and talking about stepping back from my thoughts and just sitting in the witness and witnessing them.
Yeah.
And this is really the first time that psychedelics and spirituality really came into play as one in my life. And it clicked like this. It was like 2 sessions sitting there, and I knew how to sit in the witness, which is something that's very, very like difficult for a lot of people. Absolutely. To step away from their thoughts and to watch them. And the only reason why I was able to do that was because when I was 20 and I did acid for my very first time, I walked around for 3 hours outside of my body. And I just witnessed. I witnessed myself on the phone. I witnessed myself fucking hanging out with people. Yeah. And I was easily able to associate that outer body experience with what he was describing. With what he was describing. And it was almost like him telling me to go into my soul body. And I was like, I could hop into my soul body and I could watch the thoughts. And I literally I wasn't clinging to my thoughts anymore. So they didn't have the same traction that they had at one point. So they stopped spiraling, and I stopped being attached to them at that point. Slowly, but they did not take the same hold on me. So that was really
powerful.
It was really powerful, and it was really the first time in my life that I could say that I was becoming more of a spiritual being. Yeah. There's times before, when I would sit with Ivan and he would ask who you are. Are you your body or are you your spirit? What are you? And I would intellectually be I am my spirit, I am my soul. But that was, at that point it clicked, and it was I am more than my body. My body is just a vessel. It's just here. It's my meat puppet.
Totally. Yeah. And that's massive, because a lot of people don't ever have that sort of realization. Right? It's if we look at the world today, how much anxiety is out there, and people label it, and they do take the drugs, and they do, or if they don't, they run around circles trying to figure it out, right? And label it as a part of them as well, which I find is a big challenge with people, because if you think it is a part of you and it is you, it's ingrained in you, you're never going to be able to overcome that piece and observe it, as you say, right? But if you can step back with or without psychedelics and get to that place and observe and realize these are all just my thoughts, right? I can just let them pass. I don't need to be so attached to them. That's massive.
I think that's also that's where psychedelics really come in as a healing tool, because they really help you take a step back from yourself. They separate you from your ego, which is so fucking difficult for a normal person to do. Yeah. In your normal state, it is so difficult to step away from yourself and look at yourself from an outsider's point of view. Look at yourself and really be able to accept yourself even as just being in the situation that you're in. Yeah. And that's where the psychedelics really, if you use them as a tool, that's one of the strongest things for them.
I think you nailed it, because most people don't even realize there is the ego. The ego exists, or there are multiple selves, or you can detach from that, right? In the first place. Yeah. Never mind, okay, then how to define what is ego and what is my true self or my highest self, or what variation of, and observe and acknowledge and say, okay, that's my ego coming through, or our frustrations or our anger, any of that stuff. So it's absolutely. Yeah. When, I imagine with psychedelics now as a tool, they probably didn't start that way. Were they most people started kind of, you just played with them as a kid.
Oh yeah.
Growing up, and then eventually you had that awakening and said, hey, I can leverage these for.
Yeah. And in a way though, it's the psychedelics were calling me home, but at the same time, it was I was 13 years old playing with mushrooms, fucking going out, looking at the clouds, get together with all my friends, tried all sorts of drugs growing up. Yeah. I think it all really turned around when I first tried DMT. Yeah. That was my second biggest spiritual awakening in my life was the very first time I smoked DMT.
Give us some insight on that journey. And go before the journey. What prompted you to want to take it in the first place?
I think for me, what I feel is medicines will come into your life. They really will.
Yeah.
Like the more open you are, the more ability you have to say yes to them, like the further they will take you.
Yeah.
And DMT came into my life. Literally, this guy I know, he was the biggest crackhead I've ever met. He's this guy's a psychopath. Like, scares the shit out of every single person that he meets.
Yeah.
He has done some really bad things in his life, and he was very heavily addicted to crack. And I knew him to be the guy who cooked a lot of the crack around town, and he would sell it. And somebody that I knew who also knew him asked me to get him mushrooms.
Yeah.
He wanted an ounce of mushrooms. And I was like, okay, I will do this, but I am not seeing Fatty. His nickname was Fatty. I'm not seeing him, but I will give you the mushrooms. And he's like, okay, Fatty wants to trade a gram of DMT. He says it's the best DMT that you're going to get. At this point, I didn't even know what DMT was. I had to look it up. I said no right away. And he kept trying to push this trade. And I'm like, man, I don't want to do this. Yeah. And then I looked it up a bit, and I kind of sat with it for a couple minutes. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to say yes to this. For some reason, I felt like I should say yes.
Yeah.
So I did. And I ended up a few weeks later, I had it sitting there, and I was hanging out with my friend, and I was like, should we try this DMT? And she's like, yeah, for sure. Let's do it. And I'm like, all right. So at that point, the best way to smoke it is through a dab rig. So take out my dab rig and heat it up, and I put this tiny bit that I weighed out into a little piece of paper, dumped it into the bowl, blew it out. It was I barely held it in, and blew it out, and instantly I was transported to ancient India. Wow. And it was these flickers of literally my bedroom now is almost set up as that DMT trip was.
I've seen it. This is true.
and that was the first thing I saw. Yeah. And I was just I need to go back. And ever since that day, I probably most people smoke DMT one time, and they're good for the evening, and maybe they won't do it again for 6 months to a year. I fucking did it 20 times that night until your body's the reason why ayahuasca works is because there's two plants part of the vine. Yeah. And the one plant is really high in DMT, and the other plant is an MAO inhibitor. So it actually deteriorates enzymes that we naturally produce in our body, and it blocks those. So when you're smoking DMT, it only lasts for 15 minutes because your natural enzymes get rid of the DMT. Right. They stop the trip. So you can't really keep smoking DMT because eventually it just stops. Your body attacks it, and you stop getting high. So I probably tried about 20 times that night until it stopped. Yeah. From that day on, I was like, I need to explore this realm more and more and more. Yeah. And over the years, I had brought a lot of people in, a lot of people kind of experienced it, but nobody seemed to really grasp it like I was.
Other than probably the party, the fun,
they were having good experiences. Yeah. For me, it was this deeply healing experience. It was every time it was this major reset, and I would just feel so light coming out of it. And the girl I did it with, she ended up going for ayahuasca a few years later, and it was weird because a lot of my DMT trips, she wouldn't be in them, but there would be a calling of her name in them. And I thought I was in love with this girl. And I was well, I'm being called to her. I'm being called to her. I'm being called to her. And then her sister brought her down to do ayahuasca. She was going through a really hard time. And when she got back, she really wanted to come over and talk to me about it. We were talking, and she's like, you need to go, you need to go, you need to go. And I was I don't know. I'm still working with the DMT at this point. And any hard time in my life, I'm using it as almost a pick-me-up. I'm going have myself, like, I would lock myself in a shed, take all my clothes off. I called it my DMT lair. It was not just a shed. It was like beautifully set up, crystals everywhere, fucking artwork, like beautiful tapestries. And I'd take off all my clothes, lock the door, and I'd smoke DMT for like 5 hours. I ended up mixing the DMT with something called changa. Changa has some of the MAO inhibitors, so I can smoke DMT and not stop.
It's prolonging the high, basically.
Like you don't really come down fully. You can go back in, and you can keep going for like multiple hours.
So you're getting more scientific about the process now, learning a little bit more about it.
But through this whole time, like, still being called by her name, like, and she keeps pushing it over the next couple of years, and then she sat here with the shaman that I eventually went to, and so there's like one day I went out and I smoked a bunch of DMT, and it was like, okay, like, maybe I should accept this. So I reached out to her and I said, okay, I think I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, gave me the information to contact the shaman. Well, she actually first had to talk to her, get me kind of invited in.
Yeah.
And then I got an email, started conversing, decided to go to my first ceremony, and did like the whole diet. Like, I'm a habitual weed smoker, so in like the Shipipo way, like, if you go to Mexico, you don't have to stop smoking weed. You can smoke weed during the ceremony.
You do it properly.
But the Shipipo way, like the Amazonian way down in Peru, like the Shipipo people, like, they're very strict, and like my shaman was a doctor at one point. Like,
amazing.
She whatchamacallit, cross-references everything with doctors. So I had to go in depth about me as a person, and she's like, okay, normally you got to quit smoking weed for 2 weeks, but because you smoke so much, like, you got to quit for a month. So I quit for an entire month, and I ended up, this was the beginning of COVID, and it was like the first month of COVID, and it was like the lockdowns happened like the week I was supposed to go. It got canceled. I feel like I'm a bit rambling now, but
no, it's
so I didn't end up going, and the year before, like, my mom's best friend passed away, and Cindy was like hugely instrumental in my life. Like, when I was in high school, I was a little bit of an asshole. Like, I was a bully. Like to be a tough guy, and I'd like to push my masculinity around, and like, it was like, I wasn't a very nice person, and I didn't think very highly of myself. And Cindy somehow, like, always looked at me like, she looked at me how I feel about myself now. Yeah. And she always saw that, which was
love and light.
Yeah.
That you didn't see.
And like, it was really strange. I didn't really understand it then. And she ended up living with my parents, and she was living as she was dying. She was staying with them, and I would talk to her about DMT quite often, and she was very intrigued. She sat with my cousin during an ayahuasca ceremony, and she was just always very intrigued, and she would tell me, she's like, you're doing such great work with the divine feminine. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Cindy? Like, like, I'm not working with the divine feminine. Like, I'm smoking DMT. I'm having fun. Like, you should see the shit that I'm seeing. Like, she's like, you're doing such great work. Please, like, just keep it up.
Doing it.
Keep doing it. So she passed away in October before COVID started, I guess it was. And so she, like, I didn't get to go to my first ayahuasca ceremony, and we were doing the celebration of life, and we ended up doing her celebration of life at my house in Tsawwassen during that time. And I had just committed to, I talked to my shaman again, and I had committed to going to ceremony at the beginning of October, and this was at like the beginning of August. And we had this celebration of life there, and afterwards I sat on my back deck, and I had my first, what I would call my first DMT ceremony. And I sat there by myself, and it's the first time I purged. And this was 2 months prior to going for my ayahuasca ceremony.
So what would you say prior to that? Was it mainly like DMT had just piqued your interest? It was fun. It was less intentional?
Yeah, there wasn't as much intention put into it ever. And I didn't really put intention into it during the ceremony, but it was like I had this knowing of connection.
Yeah.
They call DMT the spirit molecule. I call it's pretty much the spirit molecule. Like
You resonate with the name.
It's a connection to God.
Yeah.
It's a connection to her, like the mother, but grandmother, like many different names, but it's like the God molecule. And like you are in your highest self, I believe, in there. And so I wanted to have this kind of real deep moment with Cindy on my porch after everybody had left that night. And I sat there.
So that was your way to try to connect to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just started purging like crazy. I remember running over to the side of my balcony and I'm like puking off of it. And there's whales jumping out of the ground and I'm just fucking going nuts, like violently puking. And ceremony ended probably about like 40 minutes or so after that. The next morning I went to go hose down my puke. There was nothing there. It was all energy I was shooting out. From that moment on, like that next day, like I used to feel kind of reset from DMT, but from that day on, like it wasn't reset. It was like walking out of an ayahuasca ceremony.
Yeah. It was reborn.
Yeah. 2 months later, I go sit with Aya and like, I've been here many, many a time. I didn't purge during that ceremony. I purged a little bit.
Yeah.
But like I had spent 2 months cleaning myself up and like that giant purge after that ceremony of life, like it was amazing. But ever since then, I've had this connection to the DMT where when I need something, when I feel like I'm holding on to something
it's
too
your
much,
medicine.
it's my medicine now. And I set it up just like I'm going to go for ayahuasca. I have to have my purge bucket there. And like the first like while I'm purging like crazy every time because I only go into it when I need the medicine now. And like every time that's what it is for me. It is just connecting to myself on such a deep level that like.
So are you going in every time now with intention, or are you going in sometimes just no expectation? You know that you need to kind of center yourself.
There's intention, but there is also not really much expectation. Like there's no controlling it. She's going to show me what I want to see. She's going to tell me what I want to see. Sometimes I don't know what I'm holding on to.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't know why I'm lost. And I go in there and immediately I find out.
So you're ready to surrender every single time.
Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things like ayahuasca, like DMT for me, like showed me is to surrender. And like to really surrender and to sit back and watch and like sink into your heart and just trust.
Well, it goes back to, you know, what you were saying about, sorry, I would call it the observer, but the witness. The witness, thank you. That is a form of surrender as well. Yeah. Right? Instead of you allowing your anxiety to own you and you needing to try to control it or figure it out or define it, you're sitting there and you're witnessing it. Yeah. Witnessing the thoughts pass through, right? So you in your ceremony as well, same thing. It's whatever's going to arrive. It might not be what you want to see. It might not be what you want to feel that time, but you have to surrender to it. If you fight it, it's only going to get...
Yeah, you're not going to hear anything. Like, you got to quiet down and surrender and let it be and let yourself be shown what she wants to show you. Because if you had it all figured out in your head, you'd know. Like, if you were already... If you don't surrender, that means that you think you already got the knowledge. Like, you think you already know what you're doing.
If you don't surrender, that's ego saying, totally needing that sense of control and as you say, thinking you have it figured out when none of us have it figured out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was a beautiful experience. And it was interesting because the DMT literally called me to ayahuasca. And like, during my ayahuasca experience, I was given my next teacher who helped me during like one of the hardest points in my life when I was dealing with like one of my roommates that ended up moving in when my brother moved out. And like without that experience of going to ayahuasca and without being presented Ramdas during that ceremony, I never would have managed to
be able to handle that.
To handle it. And instead I fucking thrived.
Yeah.
I learned so, like Ramdas says, he's like, if you can handle keeping your heart open in hell, you will learn so much about yourself and you will like evolve. And that's exactly what happened. I learned to literally sit there with my heart open when I was like being thrown into a fire of hell. Like, and like the way that he had come to me was like one of the most beautiful, ridiculous, makes almost no sense experiences I've ever, like, there is magic in the world. Like, it is crazy to not believe that, in my opinion. Now. Like, I did not know who Ramdas was. I've heard the name maybe in passing. Like, my mom is a spiritual person. I've sat with Ivan many times in my life, and like, I've heard the name in passing, but beyond that, like, didn't know shit about him.
Yeah.
In the ceremony, I get taken away on a spaceship. I'm in the spaceship in like full space gear.
This is Aya, or this is
an ayahuasca ceremony, and I'm up in this spaceship. It's a human spaceship, and I'm in a spacesuit. And then suddenly I'm not in a human spaceship, and I'm not in a spacesuit. I'm not even there. I'm just like something floating in this alien technology that I could only describe as a spaceship because I was in one before. So I was I was in the next one. The only thing in this spaceship that wasn't like kind of like building material was a claw, and the claw was kind of coming down in the center with a photograph of a man. And I was like staring at this photograph. Who is this fucking guy?
Yeah.
I have no idea who this guy is. And from then on, like
So you recognize Ramdas obviously from...
I didn't recognize
Not
him.
at the time.
I had no idea who he was. I went on with my ceremony. A bunch of other things happened during that ceremony, and
wow, that's powerful, because you didn't even have in your psyche who he was.
Yeah, like, I mean, in hindsight, if I want to make it, like, you can't rationalize a lot of these things. Like, trying to use your rational mind is, like, kind of ridiculous. It's kind of pointless.
They're not meant to be rationalized.
Yeah. If I want to rationalize it, maybe at one point I've seen a picture of Ramdas somewhere. Yeah. Somewhere along the line. And it engraved in me deep down somewhere.
Totally.
So I come out of the ceremony and I start hearing this name Ramdas all the time. I'm watching this cartoon show and they start mentioning Ramdas and talking about Ramdas. I go to sit with Ivan a few more times because I'm dealing with my roommate and I'm like starting to lose it. I've like gone for ayahuasca. I've been so light and I'm starting to kind of come back down to reality, and like, I'm having a hard time. And so I go there and he starts talking about Ramdas too. And then I go home and there's one more thing that happened. I think it was on TV randomly, just another blip, Ramdas, the name. I'm like, okay, this is too much. And like at this point
becoming too obvious.
It's becoming too obvious, and I've quieted myself down enough to be like, okay, there is a reason why this name keeps popping up. I'm going to look into this more. So I go on Google and like I'll order one of his books. Like, what's his most popular book? Be Here Now.
Yeah.
So get my copy of Be Here Now. I'm all happy. I'm fucking reading all about Ramdas. He's going to India. He's starting the psychedelic revolution. Like, he's fucking becoming the man. He's doing all this work with Tim Leary. He goes to India. He meets Maharaji. And I flip this page, and there's a photograph that was hanging in the cloth, and I just fucking burst out fucking in tears.
Wow.
It was like my heart just fucking opened wider than it's ever been, and it was like, what in the fuck? And ever since then, it's like, I listen to Ramdas all the time. I've read many of his books, and like I've gone down many rabbit holes just from him speaking about certain pieces of literature and like other things, and like everything resonates like on the deepest level for me with him. Like,
that's wild. So he's one of your biggest teachers, and he came to you during an experience.
Yeah. And like, I definitely would not be where I am today without having Ram Daas come into my life.
Yeah.
And I would not be I would not have had Ram Daas come into my life if it weren't for ayahuasca. I wouldn't have had ayahuasca come into my life if it weren't for DMT.
Well, these things are all, we know they don't happen by accident. There are no coincidences, right?
No, there's never a coincidence.
They're all connected.
Yeah. So
that's powerful. Yeah, you shared that book with me too, the Be Here Now one. And I remember a point in my healing journey being in my sauna in my backyard, reading it and getting pretty deeply connected, because it's a very abstract book, you could call it, the way it's designed. Is some just have his ramblings, others have pieces of his art, and then it's his story woven in between, which is super, super cool. And how he went from, the world he was living in to the exploratory spiritual world and finding his guides. And I think what resonates with so many people today, because it's almost like in the society we're in today, it's funny. We're going back to our roots. Yeah. Right. We've come so far away from where we were as primal beings and connecting with the earth and the world around us and each other and community. And I think now people, especially through the last couple of years, this craziness we've gone through, are realizing the importance of that again. Right. For sure. And looking inward. Sure. And that creates a couple things, right? For some people, that creates even more anxiety. And that creates even more internal challenges, kind of looking around them and saying, how did I get to where I am right now? Mm-hmm. And how do I change it? Or do I need to change it? Or do I, right? Where other people have had more soft awakenings to guide them in a direction to just simply move to where they can be more connected to the humans in their lives and try to find their tribe, if you will.
And I think that it's important to listen to really quiet down. And it's like quiet the mind, open the heart. And as you quiet the mind, you are able to listen. Yeah. And like, some people, they do have the ability to just fucking step into it and jump into the next level. But a lot of people, it's a slow journey, and there's a lot of integration. You try to go too fast. You cannot rush your healing. You cannot rush those steps.
Well, and again, we go back to what the world we live in right now. It's the instant grad on everything, right? So
we live in a more and more world.
Everything's at our fingertips.
Yeah.
We could have drones delivering food soon enough. It's going to happen. It's happening in places of the world. It's craziness. And so for someone to look at this journey, whether it's the meditation space or just connecting with yourself more and not getting that right away, right? They back out.
Yeah.
Right. They sit in meditation and try to clear your mind. If you've never done it before, it's absolute chaos, and
you're already attached to your ego so strongly, and then you challenge your ego, and then it fights back, and it wants you to grasp harder. So maybe you try something, you don't get that instant gratification, and then it's almost like, no, that doesn't work. Like it's like, I'm not going there again. But it's really like your inside's fighting, like your soul fighting your ego. It's like your ego feels challenges, goes into survival mode, and then pushes back. And
trying to break through.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that? Tell me a little bit more about the time that you explained that you were going through a little bit of hell and you had to keep an open heart. And that was, what impact that had on your journey and the tools you were leveraging at that time to be able to guide you and guide. I know that somebody else was involved in that, but anybody listening doesn't really know. So kind of paint a picture of what was happening in your place at that time and the role that you took, and again, what tools supported you then?
Well, I learned to really hold space, and I had a friend that had moved in, and I was going through a lot of healing myself. I was like literally leading up to ayahuasca, I had changed so much. I dove into myself so hard after that evening that I first purged on my DMT. And I just dove in. I really, I started making strides. And then I met this friend, and I knew her mom quite well. And I thought, I knew that she had some issues that she was dealing with. And I thought I was in a position that I could help.
Yeah.
So I invited her to, she needed somewhere to live, and I had a completely open house. I had like 4 bedrooms, and I was living there.
Brothers had moved out.
Yeah, I was living there by myself, and I was like, yeah, you know, like, come on, come in, it's fine.
Yeah.
And she ended up having a lot more deep-seated trauma than I had expected, and that I was probably prepared for. But in hindsight, it was like nothing just happens for no reason. It's like there's a reason she came, and like I learned so much about myself, but like I learned to hold space. Like I learned to sit there when like she wanted to kill herself, when she would threaten me, when she'd be screaming, when she would be psychotic and running around. I'd be begging her parents for help. Her parents said like, no, like this is up to you. We want you to do this. Like we tried. Yeah. Like, this isn't my kid. Like,
yeah, totally.
I had to step away from myself. Like really, I had to step away from my ego, because my ego was fucking screaming, no, go fucking live your life. Go fucking have fun. My heart was like, no, this girl needs help.
You gotta help this person.
And so I sat there with it, and I sat there in hell, like, and like without being able to really have the words of Ram Dass in my head, like in all of his teachings and everything I've been learning, and learning to actually sit in my heart, that I would have lost it. I would have lost it so many times. I don't know where I'm going with this anymore, but
no, just in terms of what you're going through, right? And what it taught you in terms of the tools to leverage.
Yeah, so it taught me to really separate what was hurting my ego and what was hurting me. And what was hurting me, there was nothing hurting me. I was sitting there, I was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
There is a tormented human being sitting across from me, like barely able to hold it together.
Yeah.
Like not actually even holding it together most of the time. I had to learn to be selfless and like to act from just my heart, from a place of love, and to sit in that love as much as possible. If I wasn't sitting in that love, I was probably gonna kill her. Like, and not physically. Like I could have, if I had snapped, like she would have probably taken her life.
Yeah.
Like, and so I had to sit there, and I remember sitting there once, perfectly calm, breathing, going into my heart, and she was screaming at me. Jeez. And she stands over me, and she said, "How dare you stand over me like that?" Have you ever heard of the mirror? Of course you've heard of the mirror.
Wow.
But she fucking, I'm sitting there and I'm just breathing. And I could tell, because the fear in her was so resistant to the love, but it couldn't do anything but witness it and want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So she's trying to fight it, and eventually it just calmed her completely down, because she's screaming, she's running back and forth, she's trying to challenge me, and I'm just sitting there, perfect calmness, not telling her to do anything.
Yeah.
Just
and for anybody that believes in auras, right? Your aura would have been a very different color than hers, and it would have been a battle happening right there, and eventually it had to settle.
Yeah. So that it just taught me to really to sink into myself and to trust that it will be okay.
Yeah.
And like, I think I've learned a lot through that experience. I've learned to hold space for somebody. I've learned to be love and kind of be a guide for somebody that is really in need.
Yeah.
And it ended up not the nicest situation. I had to ask her to move out, but it became to a point that I had helped as much as I could, and her dad finally decided to step back into her life. And I had helped to the point that if I was helping anymore, it would be enabling.
Yeah.
So it was like I took her as far as I could, and I was able to trust my intuition through the whole process.
Yeah.
And trust it right till the end. And that's when I ended up moving. And I moved to my parents' house, which was me kind of letting go of like how I thought I should live, and let myself float to where I needed to be next. And that brought me to my new home on the island, and it's bringing me to my new experiences. And it's all connected and it's all
totally
perfect.
What if you look at somebody like that, and obviously you're not a doctor, but from your experience, would you recommend someone in that erotic of a state, if that's the right word to use, try to leverage psychedelics as a tool?
It's a fine line, and like there are people who it is not good, like psychedelics aren't good for. I felt like she would do really well with an ayahuasca ceremony. Like I think she really kind of needs that medicine, but at the same time it's like she's so fragile, and it's like, and she will go when she needs to go. It's been presented to her many times in her life. She grew up on Salt Spring. There's a strong force that is trying to call her there, but
she's got to be willing to listen.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I'm in no position to say that somebody should be doing it.
Totally.
Like, and especially when you're that fragile. Like,
that's why I asked, because I find like someone that's, you know, maybe having those challenges, but they're still collected enough to realize some of the things they need to do going into an experience versus, you know, someone who could be that volatile, just kind of throwing it in the mix could have the adverse effect almost, right? Because they don't have any stability there to realize, not that this stuff isn't real, but that you have to let it flow and you have to surrender to it and you have to try to look for the message instead of control it. And
and like for me, I haven't experienced a hell of a lot of trauma in my life, but for somebody like her, she experienced a lot of trauma. And working with plant medicines, it brings that up. Like working with Aya, she's gonna show you, she's gonna make you relive some of the worst moments of your life. If you have blocks because of your trauma, she's gonna bring you to them. And like most reasons why people have these blocks is because they don't fucking want to deal with them.
Totally.
Like they don't ever want to look at that shit
burying
again.
them.
But opening those wounds is how you heal.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna open a wound like that, like you better be fucking prepared for it.
Yeah. It's gonna show you everything, not only the pieces that you want to see.
Yeah. And then there's also like there's certain people who aren't really allowed to do ayahuasca because of their brain chemistry.
Yeah.
And it's like she might fall into that category.
Yeah.
So I would be very hesitant to ever tell somebody who was that fragile to go and do like plant medicine or work really hard with psychedelics. Like,
what's your thought on? Because now I feel like we live in an interesting world, right, where many of these pieces, as healthy as they are, right? Like if you think of even Burning Man, however many years ago when it started, I think it was more of a grassroots experience where you had to be invited, you had to bring certain gifts, you had to know somebody to get in. I feel like that's changed even, and then my point is even ayahuasca today, I feel like some people are doing it not from an authentic place. They're doing it to check their list. They're doing it to say they've done it, to share their experience. What's your take on that? Kind of the balance of, you know, should everybody experience it?
Like, I mean, when I started smoking DMT, I used to say this line all the time. Even as somebody who loves to smoke pot, and I'm a habitual smoker, and I don't see very many negatives with it. Like, there are definitely negatives with it, but it's like, I wouldn't tell somebody to smoke weed. I wouldn't tell somebody to drink alcohol. But I used to go around telling people you should do DMT because it will open you up in a way that you have never opened up. This point in my life, I have way too much respect for it to be saying that the same. But it is like, there's something to be said about working with these medicines. Like, it will open you up. So it's like, I don't want to say that everyone shouldn't be doing them because like, I mean, I would love for everybody to awaken and to have a world of people who are.
So if it's almost to the caveat of, if you're in the right headspace, everybody should do them. If you prepare appropriately and you're doing it for the right reasons, everybody should do them. But if it's something you're not ready for, or
it's
something
just,
that.
But then it goes back to what you said. It's like most people aren't going to be doing them for the right reasons. Like, well, not most people, but there's a large majority of people looking for experiences, and it's like it's not just an experience.
They haven't done the prep work.
It's healing. It's deep healing.
Yeah.
And in my like personal experiences, it comes looking for you. Like she called to me, like ayahuasca called to me through the DMT for years. And I didn't know what the hell was happening until I got there. She stopped, like when I do DMT ceremonies now, I don't have my friend's name ringing in my head ever again. It's never happened once since I've gone for Aya.
Wow.
Because she was calling me, and now I know why. When I went for ayahuasca, I tell people all the time, it was like I went home. That's.
So you're saying it was almost because you were hearing her name and she was the one that was calling you to ayahuasca that
that was my connection to go there.
Clue to,
that was how she was calling me.
Yeah.
And that was what I had to listen to. And like when you need it, she will present herself.
Yeah.
Like it'll be easy. It will be a yes. It won't be a looking for.
Yeah, totally.
And I think there's a lot of people looking for it right now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an issue. And then there's also a lot of people who are trying to sell it. Healing's not a business. Healing's a calling. So it's like the people trying to sell it, you got to worry about. Like,
I think that's important. I mean, because I've even noticed it, in my at-home ceremonies and meditations that I do, there's a couple aids that I've wanted to pick up and I have bought, but when I go to buy it, like, you know what I mean? I have ads pop up afterwards, or I have these other products pushed on me. I'm like, no, I don't want this stuff. And you can even, it freaks me out that you can't even buy it. I agree, because it's, for the wrong hands to get on that, it's scary. And it is kind of sad, as you say, because I think there is because set and setting is so important, and because there are a lot of traditions as well that have protected these medicines for years, and they are to be done with intention, and
they're sacred.
Yeah,
they are sacred medicines, and they are sacred ceremonies. And the ceremony, like you don't just do ayahuasca. I have a friend who was on a boat in South America going down the Amazon River, and the river guide's like, "Here, drink this." He's fucking wasted.
Oh my god!
Drank a big old cup of ayahuasca on a river ride, and said he had the worst fucking 8 hours of his life.
No kidding.
I have another friend who is in Thailand. He fucking got given some ayahuasca one day. Just casually did it.
Wow.
Didn't really think about it. Said he had 1,000 deaths. He was just getting stabbed constantly for 6 to 8 hours. It's scary business. And there's also beyond taking it without any proper intention, the ceremonies themselves, they are sacred. Like the songs, like the ayahuasca songs, the caros, those songs are from nature. They've been taught through the medicine. They have been taught to heal. The vibrations of the songs affect your body in different ways. It's part of it's sound healing.
Frequencies,
we've all heard of sound healing, and it's real. The vibrations, they change you. They literally will change you.
Yeah.
And so you have to be going to the proper
facilitator, guide, shaman.
Yeah, you got to be doing it with intention. You got to,
yeah. That's no, I agree. And it's a scary one out there. I know you did recently. You did peyote, right?
Yeah, I went and sat in my first peyote ceremony recently.
What was your calling to that?
So, as you know, I did Camo earlier this year. I worked with the frog medicine in January, and the facilitator I went, she was holding ceremony for me. Her boyfriend at the time was the shaman. He held San Pedro ceremonies, and he had a little store, and I was able to actually buy some of the San Pedro. San Pedro is another cactus, very similar to peyote, high mescaline. It's very similar, but different alkaloid buildup, but very, very similar. So it is grandfather medicine as well, though. like peyote's grandfather, ayahuasca's grandmother. And so I had these 2 ceremonial doses of peyote, or of San Pedro, and I've had them since since January this year.
Yeah.
And then I have my good friend Kyle, and I told him about them, and he's like, "Oh, I'm actually growing San Pedro. Like, I've really been wanting to work with the medicine, but like I'm waiting until cactus is ready to harvest."
Yeah.
And so we almost kind of all summer were talking about working with the San Pedro, but like it's like new medicine. Like neither of us had worked with grandfather before, and like we weren't really planning to do it in a proper setting. Like we're both very seasoned with psychedelics, and he's gone for a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies. Like it's not like we were going to be just like fuck, do whatever. Like we would have taken it intentionally, but we didn't have any like proper like ceremony that we were planning to do it in, and it just never happened. But we kept talking about it, talking about it. I see my San Pedro every day. I have it in my fridge. Like I had San Pedro microdoses, so I was like working on a very small scale. Every once in a while, I do a little bit of the San Pedro microdoses just to try to get it like simulated with the medicine a bit.
Yeah.
And when was it? I guess like end of August. He called me, and he had gone to see. Like he's in breathwork training, and he had gone to see the guy who runs it all. Yeah. And he got invited to sit in the peyote ceremony. And he asked if I could come and join with them. Yeah. So I get a call, and he says, "I just got invited to a peyote ceremony. You want to come?" Yeah. Yes. all that came out of my mouth was yes. Yeah. Suddenly, like a couple days later, I'm like getting a little anxious. I'm like, oh my God, like now this is a real thing. But like I said, it just crosses your path. Mm-hmm. And like the ability to say yes, like I find it to be like, it's a coincidence, quotations, but like it's divine. It is divine. Mm-hmm. And like it's meant to be. It's not a coincidence. It's flowing. And so that's how I ended up getting invited to it. What was the question?
Yeah, that you nailed. What was your calling towards it? But I of course the next piece in that is paint a picture of what that was like. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know much about peyote. It's one I'm pretty green to. So I'm curious of what that experience was like and what the ceremony was like and all of the above.
So going back to like my friend Cindy who passed away, and she was telling me when I would talk about DMT to keep working with the divine feminine. I never circled back to that part. So the divine feminine energy, that is ayahuasca. That is, like, in my opinion, that's DMT. That's the energy that it is. And the divine masculine energy is the grandfather energy, the peyote, the San Pedro, the mescaline energy. That's the grandfather energy. That's the divine masculine. Masculine. The divine mescaline, though. Yeah. So like the divine feminine energy is a very healing, comforting kind of energy, and the masculine's more intense, kind of go-getter type of energy. And I had felt like I've kind of really leaned into divine feminine, which I thought was really important for a very long time. And I'm not saying it wasn't important, but I started to get the feeling that I've almost gone too far that way. So that's where kind of my lure to working with the peyote came, because I wanted to start working with the divine masculine energy and see where that would bring me. Right. And I had a lot, like, I had been talking to you recently about, like, I feel a real calling to be a healer, to help people, but I don't know where to go. When I went for ayahuasca, I would ask, and I would always just be told the same thing, and it's just be you, just work on yourself. And I've done that, and I've watched the beauty that's come out of that. I help people all the time, and I feel like I do nothing. Yeah. Like, I have a conversation with somebody, and like they fucking call me and tell me how much it's like truly helped them, and like I'm watching myself affect people without really doing anything but working on myself and just learning to be sitting in my heart and opening my heart and watching the beauty that brings. But I believe I have a hindrance with money, where I feel the money is kind of like I don't want to do things for money. But I'm also at a point where like I feel like I'm not really doing enough. Like I could do more to help people.
Totally.
And so I went to this ceremony, and my intention was to give me direction to where I should go to help people, but like a career, like direction. So that was like, I was hoping that the medicine was going to open me up and give me that direction, which it ended up doing.
Yeah.
The ceremony itself was rather strange because I didn't exactly know, like, going for ayahuasca, like I said, I felt like I went home. I have not felt that way towards the peyote, towards the divine masculine. Like, I didn't feel that same kind of connection to it, and I obviously hadn't worked with it. Like, I worked with DMT for a long time, so I built that connection up. I didn't have anything like that with the peyote, so like, and not many people, like, everybody just kept saying that it's gentle medicine. It's gentle and powerful medicine. Like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah. Two words don't sound like they generally go side by side.
Yeah, so I was very open to what was going to happen, but I expected a lot of, like, blasting off, like, ayahuasca, like DMT. Like, I expected, like, even, like, deep mushroom trip, like, deep fucking acid trip, like, seeing the world fucking dissolve. Like, it was not like that at all. But it was exactly what everybody said. It was gentle and it was powerful. Like, it was, you sit around the fire. We were supposed to sit in the teepee, but the ceremony grew from like 25 people to 50 people in a matter of like hours, apparently.
Yeah.
I don't know how fast it grew that, but it was supposed to be like 25 or like setting up a teepee, and then suddenly it was like, oh no, we're sitting outside. Like, beginning of October, like not a cloud in the sky. We're sitting outside all night. Luckily, I packed a bunch of stuff because it was like, oh, maybe I'll be hot. But I thought I was going to be sitting in a teepee around a fire. No. Right. So I sat outside under the stars and had like 10 blankets on me.
Yeah.
You have to sit upright in peyote, so I went out and bought myself like a meditation chair, like goes on the floor,
so it can help you
a backrest,
sit up a little
so
bit.
I can lean back, because sitting up for 12 hours is it's a long time.
Is that how long the actual medicine runs as well, or is it more that ceremony?
So the ceremony, like, we had a blessing around 8:30. The local elders came from the tribes close in the Cowichan Valley there, and they kind of gave us a blessing. And then around 10 o'clock or so, 10:30, the actual ceremony started, and we started eating the peyote around 10:45, 11.
And what form are you eating it in? Is it just literally like the leaves or the cacti? Like,
so they tell us, they're like, so you're going to be taking the peyote in two forms tonight. One form's tea, and the other form is guacamole. And you're never going to think of the word guacamole same ever again.
Yeah.
The guacamole is essentially like a paste.
Yeah.
It's like a powder and then like a little bit of water, and it's a paste.
Yeah.
And then the tea, which both of them were like, I mean, like, ayahuasca is not a very nice tasting medicine.
Yeah.
I found the peyote quite tasty. Like, I found the tea almost tasted like kind of corn chips ground up in a cup of water, which I was pleasantly surprised about.
I can dig it. Yeah.
We were supposed to go about 4 times in the night. So each time they come around, you get a bit of guacamole and you get a cup of tea. So did that. Because the ceremony was so big, I think we only made it to 3 rounds.
Yeah.
But medicine's like takes a while to kind of really kick in, but it almost like keeps building through the night, and you keep eating more and more, and it keeps building and building. You're sitting there, you're all around the fire. The fire is really important. The fire is like, I think it was like the grandfather energy is the fire, and then there's a water drum, and there's like this relationship between the fire and the water drum. I don't know very much about it, but you can tell there's like this connection.
Yeah.
And I see water as a form of love. It's like the materialized love in the world. We're mostly water.
Yeah.
Like
the world is mostly water.
Pretty much everything's mostly water. You cleanse yourself in water. Like so I see there's something to do with like love with the water drum, and then the fire of like burning your attachments. You throw your shit into the fire essentially. Like you can go up there and you can like you give it an offering, and you kind of you give up your shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, they go around, and like during the ceremony, there is the Marikame, which is like the kind of like their shaman.
Yeah.
And then he brought his family, and his family all helps. They all kind of have a different job. There's one that's like the fire keeper, and his job is specifically to keep the fire going all night. And it's a very sacred fire, so you like very important job.
No kidding, yeah.
Then there's like the drum, the water drum, the guy who's doing the water drum all night, and then there's the rattle. The rattle goes around, and we went around the circle, and you go around to each person, and everybody gets a chance to sing songs. You don't have to sing, but so like everybody sing different types of medicine songs.
Yeah.
And
did you sing?
I did not sing. I was wondering if the medicine was going to take over, because I've heard stories where the medicine takes over and you sing these songs. You just
sound like Madonna all of a sudden?
Yeah. Well, no, the songs come out of you. Like it happens.
Oh, so it's saying like an actual chant or whatever.
Like it happens like fairly often where these songs can come out of people. And like I heard this one story, and he was a guitar player, and he went for a peyote ceremony, and I think his mom like knew the Marikame and stuff like very well. He wanted her son to go, and was like, he hasn't played music in like 20 years. Like he's an amazing musician. And after the first ceremony, like he wasn't really feeling it, kind of didn't want to stay apparently. And one of the helpers came over and talked to him and was like, I want you to be singing songs tonight, like for each person. And like his job that night was apparently to just play songs for each person. So it was a different kind of ceremony, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah.
But apparently he was playing the songs. He picked up the guitar and he sung these beautiful like songs that it wasn't English. I think they must have been native songs. But for each person individually, he sung one.
It was different.
Yeah, and she asked it then. She's like, how did you know all those songs? And he's like, I didn't know a single one. He's like, I have no idea where any of that music came from.
That's incredible.
And from that day on, he was back to being a musician. Like, he was back to having his life.
I've seen that in, I know one of, I think it was, not Blue. It was one of the people that Aubrey had on one of his podcasts that was could speak Atlantean languages.
Oh,
that was without any.
Mateus.
Thank you. Yeah.
I can't remember his last name. I know.
That was wild. He could sing song. He could speak the language, and he was never trained in that. It had just come to him through past lives.
Yeah.
So that's,
There was also, I listened to Aubrey, and he talked of I think it was Vailana, and he was having like a really hard time in a trip once. And Vailana came up and put her hand on his heart, like in the heart center there, and started singing some of the Karos, and like she didn't know the words or anything, and afterwards they talked about it, and he's like, where did you learn that?
Yeah.
And she's like, it just came out. And that's the thing. That's like when you make those connections to source, there is no filtration. It's like when I talk to somebody and like and I end up helping them, it's because we have a conversation where we sit heart to heart and we open our hearts. I don't fucking think about anything. I can't.
No.
When somebody thanks me after for having a conversation, I literally hadn't thought about one word that came out of my mouth. It's like
strategizing. You're not analyzing and looking at them saying, this is wrong, this is what I can do.
Their spirit just instantly comes in and comes out.
It's flow. Yeah.
It's like, it's a rent amount.
Yeah, totally. Well, it is when you can truly connect to that degree. It's your gift.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not the easiest thing to do, but when you're using plant medicines, or if you're dealing with somebody who you truly, truly love and they're in distress, like, and your heart opens that much, like,
you have to open up to it. You have a job to do.
Yeah. But like, once the heart's that open, that's where you get the divine coming through you.
Yeah. That's powerful. What's, speaking of that space, what's your next step into that space into, so I know you love being a guide, if you will, or being of service to others.
I find I'm really good at directing people. It's like when somebody has an issue, I get fucking downloads of this is where you should go. Yeah. And it's like, rarely has anything to do with me, but it's like, go do this, read this book. Yeah. These are words you need to hear.
Yeah.
Like, but that's what the peyote ceremony was kind of for me. It was like trying to give me some direction. And going into it, like, I like breath work. I definitely haven't dove into it as much as I'd like, but like, there's a lot more that I know to learn in that realm.
Yeah.
And I came out of that peyote ceremony, and one of the guys I was talking to before, I'm asking him, like, so what's the ceremony like? And he's like, well, it's really gentle and it's kind of fun, and he's like, and then in the morning it hits you. He's like, you're kind of in this weird space, and then the sun comes up because the ceremony lasts until sunrise. So you start in the night and you go until the sunrise. And he's like, and then it kind of all comes together.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. So like, sunrise came and I was like, whoa. It was like direct message, like, you need to take the breathwave course. Like, you need to be a facilitator. And like, they teach you to hold space. Like, they teach you to hold ceremonies, like breath ceremonies. And like, there's like, going into it, I wasn't really like, oh, I'm going to do this. Like, I knew I was meeting Robin, who runs it all. And I knew I was going to meet some of the other people that have gone through the program, but like, I had no real intention of that's the direction I was going to go.
Yeah.
And I came out of it and it was like, there was no question in my mind. Literally, I reflected on it as I was driving home, and it was like the sun came up and it was like the first words out of my mouth.
Shone on your answer.
Yeah. And it was like, and then I was reflecting. I was like, that's why I went. I was like,
amazing.
I felt like I heard that you do have to kind of build a relationship with peyote. Like, and you'll start to see more in the visions. Like, when I was looking into the fire, I saw some visions. Like, I seen a woman come out of the fire. I seen like grid kind of pop up around us all. But like, I was kind of a little like, did I like not really have an experience, or did I have an experience? It was like that gentle.
Yeah, wow.
And then it was like, oh, I got everything.
Yeah,
that I came for.
It was just subtle.
It was just subtle. It was gentle, but it was super powerful because like every part of my being knew that was the right answer. That was the right way to go. And now I'm committed to this path of doing the breathwork facilitating, and like, there's nothing in me that doesn't feel like this is the direct route that I should be on. Like, this is where I need to go. These are people that are going to help me on my journey to get to the next place I need to be. And like, I don't know if that fully means that I'm going to just be sitting there holding breath, like breath classes or breath ceremonies, but like, this is definitely where I need to be to take me to wherever I need to be. But
whatever your next.
But it's not important where I'm going next. It's like you always say, it's the journey. You got to fall in love with the journey, and it is just the journey. It's like the journey will take me somewhere else. I know it will. It's taking me here.
Totally. There's never. We never have a destination to it.
Yeah. I don't want to put a destination on it, because then I feel like I stop the flow. If I put the destination on, then I'm in control. Then it's like I want to be in the universal flow. I want to be taken to where I need to be to help people the way they need to be helped.
Yeah, and that's going to change as you learn and you grow and you self-develop too.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to you're going to shift in terms of those you need to help heal as well.
And it's like, like for ayahuasca, I was always told, like in there, it was like direct messages, like keep working on you. The best way to help people is work on you, and you will help. And it's like Ram Dass says, all I can do for you is work on me, and that's truly what it is. And the more work I'm going to do on myself, the more I'm going to learn is going to help everyone else.
Totally. Yeah. At the end of the day, we can't service anybody.
No.
If we're not working on ourselves.
No.
And that never ends either, that type of work, right? We can't carry all the shit around that we haven't cleared. We don't have space to find, the gifts we need to deliver. Yeah. That's beautiful. But amazing. Well, we're well into our chat, so I don't want us to. I almost feel like we could have a part 2 on this. So let's save some goodness. But I do always have two questions we finish with to just allow you to think a little outside the box and share some more wisdom. So one is, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice with the wisdom that you have today, what would that be?
Go to the love. Always go to the love. Where you feel love, that's where you're meant to be. If you're feeling love, that means your heart's opening.
Yeah.
And I did not believe in that kind of life before. It was like that had nothing in my realm, and if I had learned that way earlier, I would be at a way different spot right now.
Well, I think that's,
I mean, everything's meant to be a certain way. I wouldn't have learned it earlier.
Totally. But I think there's a piece of wisdom within that in terms of, if we could teach the world that earlier in their lives, that, we could change a lot of lives as well. Because I know you and I both, and the majority of the world, right, if we had this type of wisdom, and that's why I say at any age, I love that question, because if I were to be delivered that message, at the age of 18, I probably would have no idea what it meant. But if I could feel that message and I could feel that wisdom being delivered and that clarity, it would open up my world. Yeah, for sure. So that's a beautiful answer. And to finish us off, this, of course, is called the Conscious Creator Podcast. So I always like to know, from a personal definition, if you were to hear, how would you define a conscious creator? Any way you like. What comes to mind?
The word manifestation comes to mind, really. The more conscious, it's what you hold in your heart becomes your reality. So if you're conscious about what you're holding in your heart, your reality you are creating is a beautiful place. If you're holding beauty and love in your heart, and if you're unconscious, the shit that you're creating, I mean, you can maybe still create it, but you're not creating the beauty from within, right?
Totally.
I guess that's kind of what I would think when I hear the concept.
Beautiful. It makes perfect sense. Yeah. So I love the question. Everybody, approaches it from a different perspective and a different angle. And I don't think we'd have had a duplicate answer yet. But everybody answers it exactly as they should and perfectly. So, Amazing. Well, thank you so much for lending your time today. We actually have the reason we are together, and the reason, we're down in actually Vancouver, British Columbia today. We are going to a big ceremony tonight, led by East Forest. And so we're super excited for that. And this was a great piece of content to drop and chat through and conversation to have to really center us in what we're doing tonight. So thanks again for joining us, brother. So much love and appreciation for you. And
thank you for having me. Love you too, man.
Thank you, everybody else, for jumping in and listening today. As I always say, if you do something like this for yourself every day to try to learn and expand your mind and, just create some you time, you pat yourself on the back, because not everybody does that. And it is what helps create consciousness in our world. So sending tons of love to everybody out there, and appreciate you all.
If today's episode resonated with you in any way, or you feel it added value to your day, please feel free to share it with friends. And of course, link and subscribe so that you can be alerted for future episodes. We sincerely appreciate you watching, and always remember to learn, laugh, and love. Until next time.